Hi, in this video, we're going to talk about whether it is okay to cut, drill, or alter your pre-manufactured roof trusses or floor trusses. My name's Chad Johnson. I'm with Truss Components of Washington. I've been in the truss industry for about 35 years. Let's go ahead and dive in. All right, you've got a set of trusses on site and something isn't quite right about them. Maybe they got broken during delivery. Maybe they were designed to a dimension that doesn't match your existing conditions in the field, or maybe that floor truss was installed where a plumbing drop needs to go. In any of these cases, you're asking the question, what can I do to alter this truss? Well, the answer is, in pretty much every case, there is something that we can do to repair a truss, but you'll always want to talk to your truss manufacturer first and find out what will be approved. In so many cases, I've seen situations where a field repair or a field alteration has been conducted without contacting the truss manufacturer, and it's just so hard to predict what the engineer is going to require. And sometimes if the field alteration is already complete, it might mean actually removing work that's already been done. But let's say that you are noticing that there's something that needs to be altered and you haven't made the change yet, and you're reaching out to your truss manufacturer. What can you expect to see when a change needs to take place? Well, let's take just a few examples here. And by the way, this is going to be a very high level look at this. Every case is different, and you'll want to consult your truss manufacturer for the specific trusses that you have on your project. But let's say, for instance, you get a truss that is just a little bit longer than it should be. So maybe you have the back wall of a garage and your roof line would continue over it, but because you have the garage valley tying in, you've got a stub truss landing on the back wall of that garage. So in most cases, we would know exactly where this garage wall is. We would design the truss to end at that garage wall. But let's say for some reason there was a miscommunication and the truss was made 6 inches longer than it should be in order to land on that wall properly. Well, not a problem. There are a bunch of different solutions in a case like this, but the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to reach out to the truss manufacturer, let them know the condition that we're experiencing. They'll reach out to the engineer who will give us instructions for either shortening that truss, that 6 inches that it's too long, or they might tell us that it's just okay to use the truss as is. But let's say we need to shorten it. So this piece of the truss will need to be removed, and somehow the remaining part of the truss will need to be reinforced. So let's say we had a web out at the end, that's going to be removed, and now we just have the open end of a truss. So the truss engineer is going to give you some sort of repair detail that is going to have instructions. It might be installing a plywood or OSB gusset over the end of that, and that will have instructions on what size that gusset would need to be, what size the nails would need to be, what the nailing pattern would be, how many nails, all that sort of stuff. So as you can see, any modification, the instructions would be very specific, and so we want to talk to the engineer and find out exactly what they want. Let's talk about another scenario. Let's say that we have a set of floor trusses. These are landing on a wall at the outside. Everything's great there, but we have a plumbing drop that's going to land right where that truss is going to be. So somehow we've got to make space for that plumbing drop, which might mean removing that truss cord. Now, ideally, we would know ahead of time, and this truss would be offset, and we would have another in order to make up the load difference in that case. But so often we'll get a notification that, hey, we had all of our trusses installed and the plumber came in and he drilled a big hole through that truss top cord. Well, again, what we're going to do is we're going to send off to the engineer a diagram of exactly how that truss is altered, and they will return to us a set of instructions that show us how to make that truss support the loads that it was designed for originally. There are lots of different ways that floor trusses can be repaired after modification. Anything from installing a couple of wood members and some plywood gussets to a steel angle iron. Lots of different options there. Well, let's say that the trusses are correct, but we just want to make a change. One of the instances that we see on a regular basis is we've got a standard truss and there's going to be HVAC equipment put up in the attic, and we need to make space for that furnace and the deck to work on it and that sort of thing. But this web is in the way. Well, it may be tempting to simply cut that web out, but like we've talked about in some other videos, the way trusses work is there are a series of triangles and they're designed to bring all of the loads to the outside of the building. Well, as soon as we remove that web, we no longer have a triangle there. So we're going to need to reinforce that truss somehow. Maybe a matter of we can install a web going the other direction to make that space. We might be able to reinforce the top chord and bottom chord so we don't need to triangulate that area. But either way, we need to have the engineer involved to give us the instructions so that that truss works the way it was originally designed to work and will carry the loads that it was designed for. Another very common modification that we see to trusses is, let's say we've got a bonus room here and we've got let's say a 2x12 bottom chord, and we needed to get some plumbing through there or electrical, and someone came through and they drilled holes in that member in order to get that plumbing or electrical through. What does that mean? Again, I keep coming back to this, but we're going to need to get in touch with the engineer and find out what a repair will be. And on the case of a modified bottom chord, it might be adding another member to the face. It could be an angle iron reinforcement. There are so many different ways it can be approached, but we want to have the engineer tell us how to repair it so that we don't have to undo work that we've already done. So I know this has been a very high level look at cutting or altering trusses. I want to just wrap up by saying it is possible to alter a truss or repair a truss in almost every instance, but it's just the best thing to get the truss manufacturer involved and get the engineer involved before the modifications are made. That's how we'll end up with the least troublesome, the least difficult, the most hassle-free modification engineering that we can have. I hope this video has been helpful for you. We'll see you on the next one.